Pediatric healthcare in Switzerland. One of the many things that you may not know about Switzerland is that their healthcare system has one of the most excellent outcomes. Just like a lot of things in Switzerland, they have very high standards for everything that they do. They're a very well-developed country, and they do a wonderful job in taking care of all of their patients. The problem, however, with Switzerland is that they don't have enough doctors for all of the patients that are coming through and that are also predicted to come through in the future. Many of the healthcare providers are foreign nationals, so this really poses an issue for medical expenses, like to get into medical school, because they have increased greatly. So it's kind of causing issues for admission and issues for people who are trying to pay for the schooling. Cantons are typically how hospitals are governed. These political administrations are the ones that handle all the funding and the organization of the hospitals. They also handle all of the private funding as well. Unfortunately, one of the biggest downfalls in Switzerland is that it's a responsibility for the individual to obtain insurance for themselves. Hospitals, they don't provide these benefits for their workers, so it's something that they must obtain by themselves. That's something that I think we kind of take for granted in our country, because we're able to receive health care for our jobs and even government assistance if needed. So to be responsible for your own health care could be something of an issue, especially since it can be way more expensive. School systems are also held to very high standards. School is compulsory, which means it is mandatory for all. All education is free of charge, but parents suffer with this because it raises their taxes very high. High taxes are unable to be avoided since school is obligatory for all. Swiss schools, however, they're very cultural and have many linguistic backgrounds. When it comes to homeschooling, though, this is something that's very uncommon in Switzerland. In fact, in most of the cantons, this is illegal. Children are always entitled to their education, and in Switzerland, that's just something that will not be a worry. Parents are very supported in the Swiss, especially new mothers. New moms are allowed to stay in the hospital as long as they need to. I thought this was pretty interesting because we're so used to going into the hospital, being admitted, having our baby, and then it seems like a day and a half later we're on our way home with our new baby, and we're like, what are we supposed to do with this thing? So I think it's really cool that they're not discharged until they feel comfortable enough to take care of their new baby at home. They're entitled to like breastfeeding courses, and also they have endless supplies of information that they are given. Daycare is rarely used in Switzerland. Parents are always the ones that take care of their children, with occasional help from the child's grandparents. Rich families, they do not use daycare, but they do take advantage of grandparent care. Unfortunately, daycare is extremely expensive, so this makes it like really financially pressing for families, and most often it will require the parents to work to pay for all the expenses. It's kind of crazy because in Switzerland, it's also considered just being selfish. Because independence is a very big thing when raising a kid in Switzerland, and like they're even discouraged from taking like their child to and from school, and usually there are constantly children like spotted walking to and from school. Epidemics are basically just like the United States in Switzerland. Of course, they have like their seasonal flu, which is something that makes its way through their country during fall and winter months. And Lyme and tick-borne meningitis usually occur in spring and summer. On June 14th, 2019, thousands of women took the plunge and protested their right for equality. Discrimination, underrepresentation, and the gender wage gap are a few things on the list of what they protested for. Switzerland may be a very developed country, but this unfortunately is just not the case for women. In fact, women actually couldn't even vote there until 1971. In 1991, women were protesting for equal rights. For a very long time, women did not have any type of maternity plans in place, and it took 98 days and 4 failed attempts to get this approved, and it still did not happen until 2005. Equal pay, however, is something that is a constitutional requirement in Switzerland. So thankfully, that's not something that they've had to worry about. When it comes to courtship in Switzerland, most people prefer same-culture marriages. Cross-culture marriage is something that is very difficult for relationships. They marry within the same religion as well because it's just easier for the people that are involved. Most couples in Switzerland would much rather just live together rather than marrying just because of tax purposes. Marriage in Switzerland is just a traditional form of living together. A wedding ceremony must take place within Swiss law. And whenever you register to be married, you have to fill out an application at the civil registry. This requires you to document personal information, your free will to marry, and then you must also provide that you're a legal resident in Switzerland. When you file all this information, you must make sure you designate the appropriate amount of time to have it completed before the ceremony. Once the information is admitted into the civil registrar, you can speak freely about the time and place of the wedding, and once this is chosen, the couple must have a civil ceremony, and then a religious ceremony may follow that. And after the wedding, the couple is actually not even permitted to change their last name. As far as ethical dilemmas in Switzerland go, they have reached a lot of progress. However, there are some significant ones that remain. There's an insufficient protection when it comes to patients. This unfortunately has been labeled a serious moral problem. There have been many attempts to fix this by receiving data from the patients to provide efficacy and improvement to their quality of care. Unfortunately, there's still a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done to eliminate these problems. When the ethical system reviewed the situation, they found that the standard is mostly to research the problem rather than actually fixing the problem.